Fishing Daily podcast with me, Oliver McBride. Today I'm with Tom Rossiter, who is the marine scientist from the SNTech. Tom is currently working on a 12-month collaboration which involves SNTech, Associated Seafoods Ltd, Marks and Spencers and Young Seafood. The project will assess the impact of the Pisces LEDs lights on unwanted bycatch in the northeast Scottish mixed demersal fisheries. The project is set to run to April 2022, and Tom was just back from a trip last week on the Moray Firth where they were running the trials. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much, Oliver.
Tom, just for people who may have not heard about the project, could you give us a brief description of what's it about?
Yeah, so SNTech is a kind of fisheries technology company, and we're making kind of hardware to help the fishing industry work towards what we're calling precision fishing. So you're going out there, you're catching what you need to catch, you're leaving everything else alone, and you're doing it in an efficient manner that means the boat makes money. Because at the end of the day, we all might love the job, but you've got to pay the bills. So with this project, we're working with Sandy and the crew on the Virtuous and the supply chain around it to try and help the vessel catch the right species, and the Virtuous is kind of mixed between nephrops, prawns and whitefish, and to try and make the whole process that much more efficient on the vessel. So you're not spending, no fisherman wants to go out there and catch load and load of kind of bycatch that they're going to have to discard. It's the last thing they want to do. And there is a perception that they're out there and that's what they want to do. It couldn't be further from the truth. Because the fact is, if you catch it, you've got to sort it, and it's an awful job to sort it. You know, boys want to go to their bunks. You know, it's heavier on the gear. It just makes no sense. So the fishermen don't want it, and what we're doing is using kind of technology aside from the kind of basic gear tech to try and push things forward. So what we're deploying are kind of lights underwater LEDs, which are programmable and configurable. And they can be put on the net in various different locations. And the biology of the animals we're dealing with, nephrops and the kind of finfish, they do see light. They've all got eyes. Different species will see different lights slightly differently. So what you're trying to do is to modify the behavior of the various different species based on the settings of the light. So perhaps, you know, one species will see a blue light and another won't. So maybe we could then highlight a particular escape feature that species will see, which is the one you want to try and get rid of, and another species will not see that and just swim past it and go into the cod end, which is where you want them because that's your target species. So it's around technology. We're also going to be deploying and supporting it with underwater cameras so that we can see what's happening down there. And, you know, the whole chance for fishermen all their lives has been, I'm trying to imagine what's going on 100 fathom beneath me because I've no idea. I can't see it. I've never been able to see it. So by using the camera technology, you can then go, oh, right, that happened. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Or my gear isn't fishing very well this way. I need to change the gear to get it more efficient and therefore catch what I need to catch more efficiently. So yeah, it's about bringing technology together, specifically around the light technology, modifying the fish behavior and getting the fishermen what they need as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
And this project's been running since April. Has the trials thrown up any new information since then?
I think we're on a learning curve. The changes so far have been kind of small. It takes a while to kind of work them out because, you know, the marine environment is an incredibly complex environment. Not only is it kind of complex, but it's three-dimensional. You know, last week, for example, when I was out, you know, one of the skippers said, watch this. And he just, on a sounder, just after the slack water on the seabed, which coincidentally was 2 hours later than the slack water on the surface, we could see the feed just rising off over a 10-minute period. It just came right up. So plenty of feed on the ground. Okay, well, is that going to affect the fish and what you catch? And of course it is, because fish need to eat, and summertime is when they get fat. So there's another factor that maybe the light hasn't some impact on, but the tide, or the weather, and all these other factors come into it. So it's it's a long project. It's 12 months, because we need that time to kind of tease it out, because we are talking about an incredibly complex world out there. And yeah, we've a lot to learn, but hopefully along the way we will be able to say, right, under these circumstances the lights are effective at achieving X, Y, and Z.
And then that, would the depth that the boats operating their trawl gear, would that have an effect on it as well? Would more shallower waters be different to deep sea waters?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's got to do with how the light penetrates the water. So towards the surface, you'll see the reds, but as you go down to the water column, those get filtered out, and then you start to move into the greens, and then as you go down, you'll see the blues. So if you take a camera without any lights and you drop it into the water and you just let it drop through, the color, the background color changes as the lights get filtered out, and the last picture before it kind of goes black looks a bit blue. So yeah, if you're in inshore waters and you're working maybe 5, 6, 10 fathom, then the species probably have a better chance of seeing the red light, and then that becomes applicable. But as you go to the further deeper waters, then really their sensitivity is much higher, because they don't get to see very much light. But secondly, their sensitivity to different wavelengths is probably much more tuned to the longer blue color rather than the shorter red colors.
And what about on muddier grounds and harder grounds? There's a difference there as well, is there?
There is, if we look at the nephrops trawl, the whole idea with nephrops is you've got a scraper net mostly, particularly if you're on the cleaner ground. So you're trying to you're trying to basically scoop them into the net. You're not necessarily digging them out like you would with a scallop dredge, but you're trying to scoop them along, and they're not swimming a foot off. They are crawling along.
Yeah.
But if you've got any contact, what you do then is you generate a kind of mud dust cloud. And what we've seen so far from the footage is you kind of get, if I'm at the headline height for most prawn trawls, we'll say it's in the extension, we're about meter high. You've probably got a half meter where it's just an absolute sandstorm or mud storm. You can't see a thing, so the light's not going to penetrate through that. And equally, if a fish or a nephrops is in there, it's not going to see a light to go, that's the way out. It's just absolutely, you're going to the cod end whether you like it or not. And that's very clear. And we've seen a lot of that with the smaller fish. They just don't have the puff to kind of get out and get up out of that. They're down there and they're on the way. It's like a conveyor belt all the way to the cod end. Whereas maybe the larger fish, or like the herring and mackerel, would tend to avoid that, and they're stronger swimmers, and they can get up above it. And then when it comes to a square mesh panel, they go, that's the way out, and they're much better at getting out. So we're certainly learning a lot around the kind of behavior of the various different fish on the different substrates. And I guess if you were to go with a large hopper net, on a cleaner white fish, then you're not going to get that same effect, and you're probably not picking up the really small flatfish at the same time as well. So yeah, it certainly does have a bearing on it too, Oliver.
Like, what size of lights are these? Are these big lights, or are they small lights, or how do they operate?
They're pretty small. They're the size of your kind of palm of your hand. Oh,
right. So yeah,
that's my background. There we go. So it's about the size of it. Fits in the palm of your hand. They're pretty. They sit on the kind of side view, So they're very good for going across, like basically they're fit and forget, which they have to be. The last thing we can do is ask fishermen to be nursing things in and out over the rail. It just doesn't work like that. Your focus when you're fishing is catching fish, and you don't want having to take other things into account. The amount of times I've been barked at by skippers, hurry up, get it out. But that, and it's not in any malicious way, because time's money for these guys. So I can't be slowing them up. We've got to be helping rather than hindering them. And for every time I've been shouted at, probably a crewman's been shouted at 2 or 3 times. So, I don't feel so bad about it.
And the you can increase and decrease the number of LEDs on the net because they're detachable.
Yeah.
Would you need more for certain grounds, or for certain fish, or how would that work?
Yeah, it obviously the bigger the gear is, the more lights you will be looking at, because we're trying to kind of create, in some cases, if we're working around the mouth of the net, you're creating a kind of curtain effect in front of the net, and in some ways maybe that's attracting, and in other ways you may be trying to repel certain species. So yeah, it will vary, and also the headline height. If you're trying to, so the lights kind of come out, the light comes out on a cone effect, but if the headline's only a foot, then that cone's not going to be very wide at the bottom, and therefore won't have as big an impact. While if you've got like a 2-meter headline, then that cone effect can stretch much broader and further away. So yeah, it depends a lot on the gear, the setup the guys are working. Cover trawls versus a coverless trawl will also impact. We're doing some work with scallop guys as well, and that's a completely different kind of ball game. But yeah, very much depends on the kind of gear. And as you know, pretty much everybody's gear is different. You might buy it from, Swan or wherever, but when you get it onto your boat, you'll change little things and you'll do things a little bit different. And, maybe you're working twin rig and your club's slightly different, or so. Yeah, you've got to look at it, certainly the gear that the guy's working, and make it fit in around that.
So with the prawn gear, do you see a lot of reduction in bycatch?
So at the moment, the results we've had so far, we're not seeing significant, but we're only starting out, and we're kind of going methodically through various different settings. So within the light, we've got, and here's the remote control just to kind of give you an idea. So really, what we're trying to do here is to kind of go through the various options. So you've got 6 colors. You've got 4 different brightness settings, and then you've got kind of 4 different flashing settings. So 4 times 4 times 6 is quite a lot of kind of permutations that we're going to be working through. So far we've certainly seen some decreases in certain species and increases in others. And it depends on the vessel. If you've got quota for whitings and we're able to attract whitings and not scare away prawns, then quid's in, great. But if the whitings or haddocks are being attracted at the same time as the whitings, and you haven't got the quota for the haddocks, then you've got a headache. So it's a lot of it depends on the individual kind of availability of quota on the vessels and targets, etc. So it becomes almost a bespoke solution for each vessel, but it's, we're looking to find hard and fast rules to say the flashing blue light at kind of 8 flashes per second is really good at scaring away the cod. It reduces maybe haddocks by 10%, but that's acceptable because actually I'm not catching any cod, and that's a really big positive for the business, and means I'm not going to get tied up early for the landing obligation or whatever else.
That sounds good. That sounds like it's an achievable target to help reduce bycatch.
Yeah, but it's not a silver bullet, I guess is what I would say with it, because there's different, if you get haddock and cod attacked, yeah, doing the same thing, then, you know, how do we filter that out? And yeah, there's gear technology involved in this. There's, you know, fishing practices, and moving areas, and, you know, we've got apps now in place that help the guys to avoid areas where there's lots of kind of juvenile fish or what have you. So, you know, it's one of many tools, because we need many tools. It's, yeah, it's, as I said before, it's an incredibly dynamic and complex world, and we really just scratching the surface so far. So yeah, the more tools the better.
Yeah, it's a mystery down there, and it's a mystery what fish are doing. And
Absolutely.
I suppose there's so many different fishing gears. Can this be applied to different fishing gears as well outside of trawls? Can it be used on seam nets? Can it be used on static gear like gill nets or those?
Yeah, so the Pisces product that we've got is designed for mobile gears. As I mentioned before, we've got, you know, we're doing some work with scallop sector. We've worked in beam trawls. We've done some CNET, so it works across the board. But with a mobile gear, you've kind of got a fixed. Yeah, it is the size it is, and you put the lights there, and the lights go with the gear. When you get to static gear, you know, particularly when you're netting or potting, you know, you've got many hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, or hundreds of creels, pots, and when it comes to that, it is effective, but the cost of the product is certainly out with the range where it will be cost effective. So where we've tended to work with that, Oliver, is actually when you're carrying out your kind of your scientific assessment, you know, you're doing your feasibility of, will this work, can it help? You know, our product really good because you've got all that configurability about it. But once you get to a point where, okay, we know it's the white light, it's at this intensity, and it's at this flash rate, that's what scares away the turtles, dolphins, bass, whatever you're trying to do, then, you know, what you would want to do is find a more cost-effective solution, because yeah, it just wouldn't be economically viable to use Pisces for that purpose.
And there's more than just the one boat involved in this project.
Yeah, we're working across 4 vessels. We've got 1 vessel in Northern Ireland, and working the Irish Sea, Isle of Man up towards the Clyde. We've got a vessel in the Clyde as well, and we're working with another vessel up in the Murray Firth in the North Sea. So, you know, the more eyes on it, the better. And the reason why we're working with so many and why we're working with these guys is, you know, if we want to see if this is going to work, it's all well and good doing tank tests in a controlled environment, but fishing isn't a controlled environment. You know, you can't account for the stress the animals feel when a big net comes around it, and this dust cloud is coming off, and all his mates are swimming with it, and, you know, so the quickest and best way of finding out, give it to fishermen. These guys will figure out whether it works, or where it works and where it doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, they'll be very quick to tell you about it. So, you know, yeah, we've got to work with good fishermen, with guys that want to see a sustainable future for their business, because that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Each one of these guys are running businesses, and the last 2 years has been immensely difficult for them, for the market and everything else. Our industry's not in a good place. It needs all the help it can get. And yeah, we want to work with the industry to get answers quickly. And these kind of collaborations and these projects are really, really effective in that regard. And, you know, we're very grateful for the assistance we're getting from the Virtuous, the Lee Rose, the Eliane, and also the Golden Ray. You know, without these skippers and the crew, we'd be sitting around kind of hypothesizing about what could happen, but that's no use. We need action rather than kind of words or thoughts at this moment in time.
Yeah, the fishing, there's a lot of interest in the fishing industry to help things environmentally and marine conservation. And there's a lot of work that sort of goes unrecognised by, I suppose, by the media and by the press. Do you think that people should be more aware of these things? Do you think that that these things should be picked up more by the media, especially the mainstream media, to show that there is an appetite out there to improve the industry?
Without a doubt, I think it's you know, we're unfortunately the fishing industry is still kind of branded or seen by the main media and the NGOs as kind of raping and pillaging and doing all bad, and there's no good coming out of these guys. They shouldn't be out there. You know, we had the Seaspiracy thing, which said just stop everything. Let's all go back to, you know, to leaving the seas alone. These guys are producing very, very important food. It's food we all enjoy eating. Putting their lives at stake, Oliver. You know, it's the most dangerous job there is out there. These guys are doing it to put food on the table. And they're also doing it because they want to see a future for their sons and daughters and their extended families and communities. And we've lost far too many of these communities already. So for me personally, I think we need to be doing more to support our fishing industry. Stop painting them as being the baddies, but appreciating, and this is where we come in, I think, to some extent, is, you know, through what we'll be doing is a bit of education here. You know, you'll never get a clean fishery, certainly in a mixed kind of, you know, demersal like the nephrops. We can improve things for sure, but you'll never get it absolutely 100% clean. We've got some very good clean fisheries or aspects to it, but you'll never get it 100%. So, okay, that's a bit of collateral damage, but you know, you walk out your front door and you walk on a snail and you say, oh, I've killed a snail. That's collateral damage. You know, if by virtue of being on this planet, we are having an impact. And when it comes to fishing, there are some impacts that are unacceptable and we need to do something about it. But there are some other impacts that we've got to accept a little bit more, rather than saying these guys aren't working hard enough. They're bloody working too hard. There's, you know, I've done a lot of jobs in my life, and I'll tell you the hardest work I've ever done is fishing, because you're working 24/7 when you're out there. You know, you don't get a rest. If you get to your bunk, great. But if you don't, the fish is on deck, you got to deal with it, you know. So a lot of people just don't see that, don't understand it. And I think, yeah, the fishing industry need a little bit more support from us. And I think they need fair prices as well, because, you know, you've just got to go around and see the ports and what, you know, the boats that are out there. There's 60, 70-year-old boats. You don't see very many 60, 70-year-old tractors unless you go to some kind of, you know, fair or something like that, where you've got somebody who's done them up, but they're not working in the fields. Was we've got a lot of boats that age working, and unfortunately we've got a lot of fishermen that age working as well. And we've got issues around kind of the youth coming through as well, and they'll only be attracted. And back in your day and my day, when there was a bit of money to be made in it, that's what brought the guys in. There's no money to be made in it. The skippers aren't kind of hoarding it all. It's just not there to pay. And yeah, I think fair prices and fair recognition for what our industry is doing is something that needs to come. And I think we've all got responsibility around that. And hopefully with this project, we'll be able to shed some light on that.
And outside of reducing the bycatch, is there any other benefits to the Pisces LEDs?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, it's the efficiency, and I think going back to you know, what we're doing, trying to, if you spend less time on deck sorting fish, then you spend more time working the fish that's going to pay. And if you can catch that more efficiently, then, you know, your life on board is a hell of a lot better than maybe it had been in the past. So the efficiency angle, I think for a long time, people were very anti-efficiency and saying it's bad, it's technical creep. We need it, because if we want to have a future in our fishing industry, we've got to change it. And it's not going to happen on its own. It's got to come through technology. And, you know, for instance, the Golden Ray that we're working with out of Port Darren's put on board a system now where what he's trying to do is just have a clean nephrops catch, but he's putting all the nephrops down below to get tailed on shore. So actually, from a crew's point of view, Darren's been successful in reducing the deck time for the crew by somewhere between 30 and 50%. Well, from a crew's point of view, I want to work on that boat because it's a much better kind of way of life. And you know, he's doing that, and he's working with his customers, of Whitby and everybody else. And I think, you know, we've got future with what he's doing, but others need to do other things. And yeah, we've got to make it more attractive so our sons and the kids in the communities want to go out there, want to be fishermen, and they're the skippers of our future.
Can other boats and that gets involved in this project? Because it does sound like it's, you know, it is going to make things a lot easier. It is going to make it the industry more attractive for young people coming into it. There is other issues out there, I suppose, that needs to be worked around as well, like the government and government funding and everything like that. But generally, the lifestyle fishing day, this could help it.
You know, I think it's a lot of things that come together, and we're part of that. You know, it's as I say, it's definitely got to change, and we're here to kind of help. We'll do part of it. There are others that do other systems and processes that'll make it. But in the long term, yes, we'd certainly, well, if anybody's interested, you know, please get in touch. We're more than happy to work with you. What I would say though on this, and this is credit to the guys that we're working with, the skippers, the boat we're working with. We can't afford to pay. You know, we're doing this off on the as cheaply as we possibly can, because we haven't got deep pockets. We're a small startup business based in London, so we're working with guys on a volunteering basis. We'll put time into it, but you know, at the same time, we're asking them to collect some information and data and provide photographs and so on, which is an extra hassle for these guys. And the quid pro quo with that is we'll turn that around and we'll provide them feedback and help them to kind of monitor and maybe actually, you know, say, well, actually, this looks to be a factor that's affecting your catch rates. And if we think, based on what we've seen, if you were to follow this particular line, you will get more productive kind of catching. So, you know, we'll work with you, but there are some risks, and there's certainly a bit more work for the crew than and the skipper than previously. So you've kind of got to be engaged with that, and we're fortunate with the guys we have, Sandy and the other guys, that you know, they're on the ball. They're trying to help us make this better. We've made some changes to some of the stuff like fittings and so on that, you know, we wouldn't have been able to make without their input. So it definitely works both ways. But I think if we just stand here and wait for things to happen, we're all going to be out the door and out of a job pretty soon, because this industry is not looking after itself very well. And yeah, as you mentioned, the kind of government and that probably needs to do a little bit more. So I think if we pick it up and go to them with some answers, then potentially I think we're going to have a bit more joy.
And what's the next stages for the trials?
It's carry on and keep kind of plugging away at it. You know, we'll be doing some more trips with fishermen over the coming months, sampling, trying different setups. We're doing some modifications around the camera situation, so that, you know, we're getting a camera that's almost a fit and forget as well. And, you know, the fishermen are really enthusiastic. You know, that's the thing with the lights, is it takes a long time to see the difference. You put a camera on a fishing net and it's instant gratification, and it's the best. You know, fishermen absolutely love it. I used to work at a flume tank here in Hull when Seafish had it, and just, you'd have crusty old fisherman, 60 years of age, and he knows everything, he's seen everything. You bring him out to the flume tank, you put a net in the water, it's like, wow, they're like kiddies in a sweet shop. And the cameras kind of give them a little bit of that, and it's fantastic. And you know, to some extent, it maybe even just validates what you already know, but at least you've got proof now that what you thought is correct. So yeah, we're going to continue with it. We're listening. We want to know how we can help and, you know, benefit the industry. And I think as well as, you know, being here today, it's telling the story and getting awareness of kind of how tough this life is and how tough the job is for these guys. And, you know, I think we undervalue what they do, and we undervalue the resource. And I think ultimately, if we want to have this in the future, we've got to look after these guys. And maybe if our fish supper costs an extra 50p, if that goes into the fisherman's pocket, then great.
Well, Tom, it's been very interesting chatting to you, and I'm sure we'll have you back again for an update on what's happening, because it's a really interesting project, and I think people will want to keep in touch to see and to find out what is going to come next, and if this is going to make a big difference for them.
We're very happy to do so, Oliver. And listen, thank you very much for having time today. And yeah, we'll see where we get to. It's exciting times, and you know, just again, thank you to the guys we've got on board that, you know, are going the extra mile and doing the extra thing and putting up with me sometimes as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'll be delighted to come back and speak to you, you know, in another 6 months or so.
That'll be great, Tom. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers.